Morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Not very well. I've got something going on. We don't know what it is yet.
Oh, no.
Now, my hip is fine. My hip is 100%. The doctor, the surgeon said, you don't need to come back. It's all healed and just keep doing what you're doing.
Good.
So, out of the way. But now I've got this shortness of breath and a cough and
Oh, well, the cough I've had, I can't get rid of the cough.
Yeah, well, this is, my oxygen level's a little low and rapid heartbeat, not AFib. But I had big blood test and I'm going to see the doctor next week and hopefully he'll have an answer because I'm tired of this. All I want to do is lay down and sleep. Really, I mean, seriously, I'm just worn out just taking a shower. So anyway, aside from that, life is okay.
Good.
So how are you?
Tired. Same thing. I'm tired of the cough. I'm tired. I mean, nobody can figure out what it is. I know it. I can't, if I talk too much, it's all here in the throat.
Yeah, well, I talked to the doctor and he said, well, he tested me for, and I don't know the results yet, valley fever, whooping cough. But I don't know the results yet. We just.
Betty has the same thing. What is your symptoms, Ruth Ann?
Me? I have this cough and I think my larynx gets inflamed from talking and I can't stop talking.
Do you get any like a phlegm in your throat?
Yeah, I've always had postnasal drip and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, Betty has the same symptoms.
I've had this before, but this is the worst it's ever been.
Yeah, the same with Betty. I'm sorry to hear that. I'm very sorry to hear that. And hi, Gail.
Good morning.
And, hi, Grace.
Good morning.
Good morning, Grace. Where's Mary?
Shabbat shalom.
Shalom Shabbat.
There she is.
Good morning.
There's Mary. Yeah. All right. So
Did you guys get rain recently?
Oh, yes.
Lots. Gonna get more today too.
I hope so.
Yeah, I think a big storm's coming this afternoon.
Well, I went to get my mail yesterday and I decided to take the shortcut from my neighbor's. I came up my neighbor's walkway and then just walked over the little bit of dirt in between our houses. And I took one step into the dirt and found out what saturated ground here in Green Valley is. I mean, my foot went straight down and way past my ankle. Thankfully, with all the water out there, I put on my my flip-flops. So I was just covered with mud and they're still outside. I'm waiting for the rain to rinse them off.
well, Ruth Ann, Green Valley itself is one big sinkhole.
Yeah.
The whole thing, the whole Green Valley. And it's still sinking.
Yeah. Oh, Gail will have a coughing party pretty soon.
I slept in sweatpants and a long sleeve shirt last night because of the cold here.
Oh, it's not that cold here, that's for sure.
Well, we
Good
had
morning, Dawn.
49-degree weather last night.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm ready to come back to the desert.
It's comfortable here. Okay, I'm gonna go get my tea.
Good morning, Don.
Good morning.
Hi, Amy.
Good morning, Amy.
Hi, Amy. Hi, Amy.
Hi, Mike, how are you?
Amy. Hello? Hi, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can now, yes.
Yes. But are you practicing ventriloquism?
I think that's a photograph background.
Oh,
Eileen, good morning, good morning, Eileen. Shabbat shalom, everyone.
yeah. Hi, Helene.
Shabbat shalom,
Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Shabbat shalom.
Shalom Shabbat.
Shabbat shalom.
Hey, welcome.
Hello, David
Hello.
and Ruth Ann and
I have a.
and
I have
Gail
a,
and Mary and Anita.
yeah, I have a.
Everybody there.
Yeah, I have a question for Helene this morning.
Hi, Ruth.
Hi, Betty.
How are you, everybody? How are you?
I have a question for Helene while we're waiting. Can you hear me?
We have feedback from somebody.
I think that's coming from Amy.
I can't hear.
You can't hear.
What would be causing it?
Hard time with my hearing. Hold on, I would like to hear it.
Thank you, Ruth Ann.
Okay, hi, Amy. I
Hello,
just wanted to
Marty.
welcome everyone. David, thank you. I know you and Wendy are taking time off because of your family being there.
Yeah, I'm only going to be here for the first few minutes, but Wendy should also be here for the first few minutes.
Okay,
Because she has a little story to tell.
okay, that's fine. And Amy, welcome. Amy, you're muted.
Yeah. Amy, I muted you because we were getting feedback. So you have to unmute.
Be sure, Amy, just be sure that you do not have a radio or other sound producing event, that
I'll try to talk
device.
loud.
No audio
If you talk
equipment
loud,
on.
I'll hear you. Try to talk loud. My hearing aids aren't working so good.
Okay, can
Hey.
you hear me, Helene?
What were you asking?
Well, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Not great, but I can hear you.
Okay.
Helene, it's going to be controlled by your computer, not how loud we talk.
Oh, is that right?
Yes, so you have to turn the volume up on your computer.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
I'm
well, welcome,
listening.
everyone.
I'm
I'm going
listening.
to let David,
What is it, Martin?
I'm going to let David start because I know he has
Good.
company,
I'm
and
grateful
Wendy,
to
I
be-
think, is there too. So David, you have the floor,
Well,
or
thank
the
you very much,
airwaves, whatever
Wendy.
you want to call it.
And there's just a couple of things. We every Wednesday night, the Chabad session here in Vale does a session, and I like to go to it. And the rabbi was talking this last Wednesday about the golden calf. And as soon as he started talking about it, I had this big smile on my face because of a little story Wendy loved to tell. And the rabbi asked about it, and I said, well, there's a little bit of humor. And right away he said,
Thank you.
there's no humor in this at
Thank
all.
you.
And I said, well, I think there is.
Okay,
And
thank
I
you.
told the story. And I told the story about about this group of people building, talking about the golden calf. And they go, and then Moses comes down with the tablets. He sees the golden calf. He lifts up, he sees the calf, he lifts up the tablets, and the people go, kerplunk, go the tablets. And he goes through this little song about kerplunk, go the tablets. It's just like the commercial. Anyway,
Okay.
nobody thought it was funny in that group. Anyway, but now for the poem. And I guess that's the same with this group. Anyway, I just could not keep myself from smiling during that entire session. Anyway, today my quotation is going to be from Tennyson. And he also, he wrote this poem called In Memoriam. It was really he found out in about 1831 that his best friend in his 20s had died of a stroke, and it just tore the man apart. He started to write a quatrain a little bit about it, and then he wrote another one. And within about 10 years, he had written hundreds of them. And he decided to put them all together into a massive elegy for his friend. The work was really something that's considered now one of the finest works of literature in the 19th century. He talked about the rise of science and the important developments of science during the 19th century, including evolution and including astronomy. He ends the poem with an idea which is really taken from 20th century physics. He anticipated it by more than a century. Will the universe end in a big bang, another big bang as it contracts, or will it continue to expand forever? And that's one of the big questions. Astronomers today think they've answered it, with the answer that it will expand forever because of the detection of dark matter, which we cannot see. But I'm not so sure. And anyway, what I wanted to do is to quote the entire last verse of the poem. He is thinking about it, and at the end of the poem, he goes back to his friend and he says these words: that friend of mine who lives in God, that God, which ever lived and loved, one God, one law, one element, and one far off divine event to which the whole creation moves. Thank you very much, Marty, and all. Shabbat Shalom, and back to you.
Shabbat Shalom. Did Wendy want to say something? I know you have company that you want to get back.
No, she's with our children in the other part of the house.
Oh, okay.
The
Okay.
only other thing she wanted to say was when the idea that when, and I'll probably get this wrong, but when Moses goes up to the top of Mount Sinai to get the 10 Commandments, she sits down in a chair and God says, take out a sheet of paper, fold it in two, and number from 1 to 10.
Very good. Very
Thank you.
good. Okay. Well, Rabbi Norman will not be with us today. Yes, Michael.
Yes, I tried to ask Helene a question way before you got here, but there was a lot of confusion with the sound. But I have a question, not to be answered now, but just a question for a later date. So, Helene, can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, she heard you.
She's muted.
Oh, she's muted. Yeah, I wanted to know why, in your opinion, there is anti-Semitism. And that's a question for not now, but for later.
Okay.
I wanted your opinion on that.
Okay, that we should have as a separate discussion, because that could take up a whole year of discussion. Okay, because there are many facets to that. And it's an excellent question. That's something that maybe someone would want to start a series on for the, at the temple, because there are things that have been said by multiple individuals. And so rather than taking up more time in Torah study, I want to relate the opening prayer. And I'll read it in Hebrew. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Amen. We are in the midst of Mishpatim. And this is this is basically the laws and rules that come down from God directly to the people. If you notice that Moses is not the intermediary here, it's directly to the people. And I want to digress just for a short while or a long while, it depends on what people want to add. Why is this very important in the history of the Jewish people? That's the question. We're in the midst of receiving all of these laws. And now we're in the midst of the examples that are being set forth in the form of law, but also what else is not being said that is very important. Yes, Amy.
Amy, you're muted.
Well, while Amy is trying to get started, are there any other ideas about this? Yes, Don.
Marty, could you expand a bit on your question? I'm not sure I understood what you were asking for.
Okay, we've been given the 10 Commandments, and now there's a whole bunch of rules and laws to live by. What is it's obvious that these are coming from God. What is not being said about the laws? Most of the laws are, this is what you should do and not do. But what is not being said that's extremely important? Yes, Amy.
This is probably not what you're after, but to me, it is God affirming his being the father over these children of his, the Jews, and instructing them as a father would his child.
Okay, so when a parent does that, okay, what is the hidden message of the parent when the parent says, look both ways before you cross the street?
Protection.
Protection. It's a very important, okay, and protection from who? Okay, Gail, you had your hand up before.
I was going to say teaching them how to be independent.
Yes, very important. Someone once said that law was not made for lawyers. What's the message in there that isn't said?
Could you say that again, Marty, please?
The law was not made for lawyers.
That's because they want to get around the law. They want to, that would fit, I think, very well with a defense lawyer. Because if somebody is accused of a crime and the lawyer is trying to kind of avoid the law to get his client off the hook, so to speak.
Well, that's why okay, that's an example. But why is the statement made that the law is not made for lawyers? Don.
Are you getting at the fact that each individual has to internalize the commandments for themselves? That at this point, they don't need priests and outside authorities anymore. because they are capable of understanding and having their own carrots and sticks for their daily
Very,
life.
very good. Very well stated. How does one become independent, like what Gail was getting after? How does one get free? That's also inherent in this. What does freedom mean? Is it just following the laws? Knowing the laws?
Maybe it's creating the laws.
Well, if somebody creates the law, we are told what is important to keep at one side. The Torah, the word of God. So the laws that man creates should be based on what God set in motion. That's really one of the hidden messages. Okay, that when we make a decision to do things, when we tell people how to behave, what to do, it's so that it's for not only for the individual, but also the society. How do you create a nation? There are rules to live by. That's the underlying statement here. So in order to progress, you have to know the law. Now, examples will come up, and throughout the rest of Torah, there's a whole bunch of other examples. But over time, the interpretation of those examples changes. Yes, Michael.
Well, what comes first, society or the law?
You tell me. According to Torah, what is it?
What's the question, please? Can you repeat the question?
Repeat the question, Michael.
Well, what comes first, society or the law? Well, you need the society to create God's law, in my estimation.
Okay. But God is saying, here are the laws for which you will make a society.
And who is he saying this to?
The people.
And the people are what? The society, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So
therefore,
your question is profound. It's very important, but the people have to accept the laws that are given to them in order for the society to be just. Lots of hands. Okay, Don and then Amy.
I think Amy was first.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Amy.
Thank you, Don. I think the law comes first, Michael, because you don't really have a society without guidelines on how to structure your lives together, your community.
Okay. So, and it's the parents' role, society's role to continue teaching those to the children. Yes, Don.
Well, for that choice, first of all, God made a decision. He said, here's the law. I don't care if you have a society or not. Here's the law. But the implication to me is also that it requires literacy. Because God actually wrote the law. It's first time probably in the Torah that the written law was established. So it's required that the people become literate in order to have the law to live by.
Okay. Gail. Thank you, Don.
I'm speaking from an experience I had. There were a lot of us that decided we wanted to form a community in Israel up on the mountain. Okay. So we all got together in New York, and then we all made Aliyah to Israel. And we were built a little settlement on top of the mountain. And immediately we had to meet because we had no rules, we had no regulations, we had no, I won't say laws. Some things were decided for us, whether we wanted it or not, but by the government. But what came first was the agreement that we were going to be a society. But then we suddenly realized we had a lot of decisions to make. We had to write down everything, and it was very complicated and caused a lot of shouting and murmuring. We got it done eventually. But what came first was the agreement that we wanted to be a quote society. Then we had to suddenly realized we had to have rules and regulations. So that's just,
Okay.
an orderly procession, of things, events.
Thank you. Yes, Rabbi Mary.
Okay, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Michael, to not answer, but to propose your question, who came first, the chicken? No, not the chicken. The society or the laws. Now, why would have been a society? Why would have been a community? That's one of the questions that you need to ask. What is a society? Let's say what came to my mind was, a bunch of kids want to get together to play soccer. So they're playing, and all of a sudden someone throws the ball outside. Oh, wait, that counts or that not counts. So because you have, like Gail said, we wanted to do so and so. So we wanted to play soccer. So now, because we are all together and someone does something that it's not agreeable to the entire group, then we decide that we have to have a rule. You are not allowed to touch the ball with your hand. So that's because some people did that. So the laws come, and I mentioned that before, the laws come to organize something that people were doing that it's not good. That society, that I didn't go into why a society is becoming and so forth, which that's also at least 6 months of work on that. But laws are to restore order in that society, because when someone does not breaks because there is no law, someone does something that doesn't make sense. We're playing soccer, that's with the legs, only the goalie can touch. So, okay, rule number 1 is that. Rule number 2 is that. But because that was not happening and the group did not agree for that to happen. So in Gail's example, the ideal was to form this group, to go on the mountain, to create a community. They all probably believe in the same purpose and so forth. And then things started being, one person said, can I add to the society my cousin who lives in Tel Aviv? And the group has to come and decide, well, if she does it, I'm going to do it. Let's create a law. I talked a lot now, so anyone that wants to.
But that's another good point, because Moses said that's the whole role of Yitro. You have to delegate. You can't make all these decisions yourself. And maybe this is a list of what was being debated among the different tribal leaders. How do you set a law in place? And maybe God is the arbiter here. I don't know. we're not told of all the different arguments that Moses had to deal with. Maybe this is part of the issues that came up. I do not know. It's not stated. Yes, Don.
Yes, thank you. With all respect, I would take us back to Genesis chapter 1, when there was Adam and Eve, there was no society to speak of, but God gave the first law, thou shalt not eat of the fruit of the tree. And it didn't require, that was the law. That was the only law, in fact. And the consequences, God said, is that in that day you shall surely die. So we've got the law, we've got the two-person society, and we've got the consequences of breaking that law, so we have a system of justice. And so that really set the stage for all of this, I think. And of course, Adam and Eve escaped the consequences because they did not die in that day. They went on waiting for the other shoe to drop for a long time. The suspense must have been awful.
So, Don, let me just stop you for a second so you can continue talking about it. Why that law was created?
Why? Because God declared it. I don't need any other.
Oh, well.
The other.
That's an answer. Okay, give us another one.
So anyway, now we take a big leap. Many centuries later, now we're at the foot of Mount Sinai, except although the context has expanded, now we have 1 million Hebrews at the foot of the mountain, and it's still only one God. And now he's providing 10 basic laws instead of just one. Because now with water over the dam, it's too late to not learn about knowledge. So
it's more than that, Don. Much more.
I know that. I'm simplifying.
That's an aspect of it, but there's much more to this. Yes, Rabbi Mary.
Well, again, Don, think about it. What did God, you're working with God, okay. What God told Adam and Eve that they can do?
Be fruitful and multiply.
That's about sex. Oh, sorry. That's what else did he say to them?
Well, no, I don't think it's about sex.
He created them, and now what did he tell them?
Just tell them enjoy where you are,
How?
If you're in Disney World, make the best of it.
Okay, Don, I'm going to ask in a different way. When they say you will die, does that always mean that it is taken literally?
Well,
what is meant by your world being shattered, your belief in the Garden of Eden, in an idyllic situation, is going to die. Now put it in that context, and God can easily make the statement, you shall die, because your world is shattered. Your naivety is gone.
Now,
they had no way
but Marty and Don, this is a very good example how a law tells you you can do this, but you cannot do that. You can do, it says to them, or she says to Adam and Eve, you can eat everything you want, all the fruits in the world, but, okay, so the restriction comes because there was allowed to do everything. And now what Marty is saying, because if you do that I'm telling you not to do, these are the consequences.
Yeah. Okay, Michael has had his hand up, but
Yeah.
Grace, Michael, before I call on you long ago, Grace said something that was very, very important. She said, perhaps this is a measure of how to behave towards one another as fellow human beings and nothing more. Grace, would you like to expand on that a little bit? And then we'll go to Michael.
Thank you, Marty. Yes, just a tiny bit. It's because I looked at my notes and Rabbi Norman said something last week, which is slavery is a frame of reference to which everything else will be measured. And that kind of instigated this thought, was it's the measure of how we should just be truthful and honest and caring of one another. Doesn't matter what race, doesn't matter, of anything, because, in a typical Jewish home, everyone's welcome. We don't care, what color you are, what food you like or don't like. We're having this, and if you want to join us, join us. If you don't, we'll accommodate you. And I think that's just it's a measure of being kind and understanding.
I just want to take a little time before we go to Michael. What you said was very, very important. Okay, what is the golden rule? Anybody?
Do unto others if you want to do unto you something. I don't know.
In Judaism, it's close.
Do not do unto others what you would not have them do unto you.
To you, that's right. And it's a different way of saying exactly what you just said. Okay, that's the bottom line, and we're going to get there. Okay, we haven't arrived there yet, but Grace, what you said was extremely important. Not that everyone else was saying important things, but I think you hit the nail on the head. Yes, Michael.
What I was going to say, if I can remember now. Oh yeah, I think what's happening in that beginning with Adam and the apple, I think God is setting the stage of what's to come, and that's the beginning of the beginning, and that's what I wanted to say.
Okay. And I think that's good also. Now let's, with that in mind, our discussion, yes, Helene first and then Dawn.
Helene, you're muted. Hit your space bar. Helene, touch your space bar.
Helene?
That had to be in her book, hit the space bar.
Can you unmute her? Ruth Ann?
No.
Okay. The definition of commandments has to be recognized as a reality. If I command you to do something, so what? Who am I? I'm just what Anita said. I'm a person trying to be kind. I'm trying to be a person at Gale and Mary. Everybody says that Amy are Jewish. Everybody. Doesn't matter what I say. I swear it doesn't matter what I do. What matters is God happy. Are we here to make God happy? Because he made commandments, not laws, not rules, not ideas, not discussion. When you command, you are the father of us all, and we are all your children, and your goal is to pass it on to the children of Judaism forever.
and he is a change. This is what's happening. So that's what I say.
Very
Helene,
good. Very
if I-
good point.
yeah,
Excellent point.
uh,
Don had his hand up first and then Michael.
Well, I was really going to defer to Helene on this point, and that is that although the golden rule is do not do unto others what you would not have them do unto you, nobody counted on there being kids who were harmed in their families when they were young and who grew up with such a sense of failure that they expect to harm themselves. They expect to be harmed, and so they pass that on to the people around them, and so they actually need to be harmed in order to have their identities affirmed. It's a horrible situation. And Helene, I'm sure you know a lot more about this than I do, but I see it all around me where the golden rule doesn't always apply because of what we do to our kids.
Thank you, Don. That was very important.
Did you want me to respond to what you said?
Please, yeah.
What, would you repeat it in another way?
Something short, Don, so she can.
Yeah.
Because
Short
Helene
is-
is getting over COVID.
Yeah,
Yeah, I got it.
I'm getting over COVID and it's not easy. So
Right.
help me, please.
Do families who weaken their kids' self-image raise kids who will break the golden rule because they don't know what it's like to not do unto others what they would not do to themselves? You know, self-harm. Kids, they cut themselves. They do horrible things to themselves because of the image they grew up with in their families.
So if there's problems in the family, is that what you're saying?
If the kids are harmed in their families growing up, are they capable of observing the golden rule when they grow up?
The golden rule is encompassed in the commandments, and only God can determine whether the commandment is social, emotional, or psychological, or even physical. Only God. And we take on too much power saying, I think this is right. Anita says, you know, with kindness, absolutely, Anita. And Michael, absolutely, you're all right. But the ultimate answer for me is what is pleasing God. And if it's pleasing God, he is our Father of all religions, and it will be done if we are pleasing God's and listening to his commandments, not laws, not rules.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Michael.
yeah.
Thank you for waiting.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. Helene, I guess.
And I think Martin and Michael, someday maybe we can get together as a group and have a group session on this crucial discussion.
Yes, I wanted to say something
Thank you.
to you. I wanted to say something to you, Helene. And you raised the point again, so that's wonderful. As you talk about God and the commandments at this time, I always use who is the commander of the 10 commandments. The commander, because it really ties in very well, in my opinion. And it's the commander at that moment. God is always the commander, but none such as important as when it comes to the commandments, the 10 commandments and the rest of the commandments.
You're right. The commander,
Very good.
is the commander all the time. And we have to honor that and celebrate it. And we're doing that this morning.
Very good. Well, I know we've
And
mentioned
I
a
have
lot.
to leave. I love you all, but it's enough. I'm very
I
tired.
understand.
Okay, thank
Be
you.
well, Helene.
Thank you, thank you.
So with all of this in mind, let's return to the scripture. We begin with Exodus 21, verse 12. So if somebody would read verses 12 and 13. If nobody has, yes, Grace, please.
I will attempt it. 21, 12, and 13.
Yes.
He who fatally strikes a man shall be put to death. If he did not do it by design, but it came about by an act of God, I will assign you a place to which he can flee.
Okay. Comments, discussion.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, by design means on purpose.
Right.
And so that, and the way we see things today, that when you take someone's life on purpose, that's a premeditated killing, which we know, which in our society today, which translates into murder. Usually first degree, because there's first degree, second degree, and third degree. But first degree is by design, and it has to be proven in court by 12 people. So, but nevertheless, that's what stands out for me in this reading.
Okay.
Now, please, could anyone read a translation of verse 12? Because I'm holding the Hebrew and I have a problem with that one.
I was going to get to that. And Mary, Rabbi Mary, it would be, I think it's important. So verse 12, it says, he who fatally strikes a man shall be put to death.
Well, can I?
Well, I'm answering Rabbi Mary right now, and then we can go into further.
Okay, pardon me.
Did you want me to read more, Rabbi Mary?
The Hebrew is very short, very, very short. It's
That's right.
5 words. And it says, the person who hits a man, not even the person, hitting a man and the man died, he's going to die too. You know, he's going to put to death. That's all. There's no God in that verse.
Okay. Could you, I can't read Hebrew as well as I would like. So I better not bring it up then. That's okay. Yeah. First, Michael, are you finished with this, or?
Well,
Because
let me. The way it reads here, he who fatally strikes a man shall be put to death. This sounds to me to be somewhat either unfinished or unfair, because it's he may have not meant to do it. It was not prearranged. It could have been in the heat of a battle or something, or But if it wasn't pre-assigned, if it wasn't assigned, then I can't really
well, the next verse, Michael, puts it in place.
Right.
It answers the question you raise. If you you have to read, that's why I wanted it read together, because the second half of this qualifies
right
what you always say, that
yes
there is a difference between murder and killing.
well
You have said it many times.
yeah
And the
and so
second one is the other half of what you say.
It's
If he did
13, right?
not do it by design,
Right. It was not done
Okay.
not by design. That means it's either an accidental killing.
exactly, and and then he says, I'm going to eventually assign you a place to which he can flee. And that will come up later, much later in our readings. Okay? The sanctuary cities.
Well,
So you
That's
are
a
correct.
different
There is a
one.
distinct difference.
yeah. And
Okay, Dave.
I don't want to keep dwelling on it, but let's hear from a
Well,
few
it's
other people.
important. It's important, Marty, because a couple of people included God in that sentence, and it does
Yes.
not appear. Gail, you have Friedman?
Yep.
Can you read that sentence in Friedman?
Are you talking about 12 or 13?
12.
Well,
Yeah, God does not enter that part.
one who strikes a man and he dies, he shall be put to death.
That's it.
Yeah. That's
It's
it.
like when Moses took a stick and hit, or he just hit the Egyptian, to death, and he died. That's the idea. Okay?
Well, I find 13 really interesting, the way Friedman
Yeah,
translates it. And I would like to hear your explanation of the Hebrew after I read it. 13 says, and one who did not scheme, but God conveyed it to his hand, I shall set a place for you that he shall flee there. But God
Yeah.
conveyed it to his hand. I think that's a very interesting phrase.
Yeah,
Sentence.
yeah. This is very different than 12. Absolutely. This is
Yes.
another story.
But God conveyed it to his hand. It sounds like God was guiding his hand to do this. It's very odd.
Well, it's God gave him the intention. You can use God, you cannot use God, but if you have the intention, now how is it?
When we use the phrase act of
And one who
God,
did
isn't
not
it?
scheme.
Isn't that a substitute for the word chance? Read
Which
your health insurance. Read your homeowner's insurance.
Oh, no.
No, but they use that word as an
Yeah.
act of God instead of by chance. If lightning strikes, it's called an act of God.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
a substitution
Exactly.
for chance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If it just happened, yeah.
So it's not really God's will. Or is it? Because chance, when you use the word chance, you really don't know. You didn't do it. Did God make you do it?
No, it's not God make you do it, Marty. That's not
Right.
God made me
Right.
do it. I think I gave an example that I was reading in the book that I was reading. These two youngsters are fighting, and one falls, and one falls and hit his head on a very heavy or sharp something. He dies. This guy that was fighting with him did not intend to kill him. It just by chance, as you call it, by something. And those that use the word Elohim, then Elohim did that because the man did not.
Mm-hmm.
At the moment that a man did not intend to kill, then who intended? God.
Okay, good. Yes, Don, I'm sorry we had you waiting such a long
No,
time.
that's a
I'm
very
sorry.
good discussion, and I just wanted to imagine a scenario where somebody is standing on a train platform with a box of food for the hungry, and another man bumps him, he falls on the tracks in front of the train, is killed. So, there's an act an act of God. But to me, verse 13 begs the question, who is this killer fleeing from? And it just seems to me in those days that it's the families of the deceased who take revenge and are used to taking
Yes.
revenge. And
Mhm.
so the killer is not
Yes.
fleeing the authorities. He's fleeing the tribe that the deceased was a member of. That's
Yeah.
the interesting part to
Yeah.
that. Is God is saying, I'm going to take you under my wing because I know it was an accident.
Right, it was an accident.
But by fleeing to another city, well, I'll bring it up in the future. I'll bring that up in the future. Since God says, I'll do it in the future. We'll discuss it in the future. Someone else had their hand up. Gail, did you have your hand up again?
Gail.
Yes.
I just wanted Mary to please translate this middle part of that verse 13 where it says, but God conveyed it to his hand. Could you give me the actual Hebrew on that? Conveyed it to his hand. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that's what I said. You know, you can call it an accident. You can call it, nature move in a, in a gravity type of thing. He's falling, so he hit himself. It was gravity. You can call it another thing. It's here. It says that God led his hand to do this act. It is what Marty said. It just, it's just happened. You are driving your car very slowly and this kid jumps in front of you and you hit him. You didn't intend to hit, the kid that dies. It's horrible, but you cannot blame yourself because based on all the conditions that were there was no intention, that was not, weapon. So some people will say, well, it was an accident. Marty will say it was just by chance. And some people will say by the hand of God, meaning that there is no really reason for that death. And Don said very cleverly, very knowledgeably, the revenge that the family wants to do, because for the family, dad is dead. They don't care if the authorities are going to call it death by intention.
By
But
the
for
way,
that family.
By the way, we are actually discussing the different levels of punishment for different levels of definition of killing or murder legally. From the side of the law starts here, but it goes further because of different events that have come along and different additions are added to the law. That's why we have murder and we have manslaughter and different degrees under each one. So it becomes a very interesting aspect to the law. Again, I wish we had a lawyer that could expand on that.
Well,
But
you
anyway,
have,
go ahead, Michael.
a very good example of what you're talking about. Really an excellent example, if you watch the whole proceedings, was the some years ago, the O.J. Simpson murder trial. You could have seen everything that came out in that particular trial, all the lawyers that were there, and each one played a part. And by watching that, you could actually, if you have any knowledge in the law at all, just a little bit, you could see how the law plays out and how the law seems to be somewhat unfair with certain aspects of what was going on. You know, some things had nothing to do with the trial, and the judge didn't call it out. You know, and this could influence the jury. You know, in certain ways. So, I mean, I can go a little bit farther than that, but it would take more time. So I just wanted to bring that one point out.
Thank you. Well, who would like to read verse 14? Yes, Grace.
I think verse 14 answers a lot of our
Yes, it
questions here.
does.
I think it wraps it up. When a man schemes against another and kills him treacherously, you shall take him from my very altar to be put to death.
And that talks about killing and murder.
Yes,
That
That's
is pretty clear.
murder. Yeah,
That dis-
exactly.
yeah.
distinguishes the two.
Yes.
Now, what was interesting is that the phrase "from my very altar," I have a commentary here that says the altar served as an asylum in many ancient and medieval cultures. And even Adonijah found safety from Solomon by grasping the horns of the altar. Okay, so the altar was also a place of refuge in ancient times.
Well, there is a problem there, Marty.
Yeah,
The issue
I
is
can
that
see it.
when they're allowed to run to those cities that are called Arei Miklat, that they are safety areas, safety cities, the person needs to go and hold the horns of something. So it means that there was, an ark or something that was there. And when he's holding there, the family cannot touch it. But it doesn't say that it's going to be in the temple one or that one doesn't count.
Right. Good point. Excellent point. Any other discussion about this? Well, so if someone would kindly read verse 15.
I have
Go
it.
ahead, Grace. Go ahead, Grace.
He who strikes his father or his mother shall be put to death.
Say kill.
Why? Why is the punishment that severe?
Because it's one of the commandments. One of the commandments is to honor thy father and mother. And
Okay. I'm going to play the role of the 2-year-old. Why? Why do you honor your parents and mother?
simply because, well, the overall writing reason is the commander of the 10 commandment, of that commandment, says so. And you don't have to go beyond that.
Yes, he gave, the commander gave, God gave the rules to the parents. So indirectly, if you do dishonor to your parents, you are dishonoring the law, you are dishonoring God. So that's another way of looking at this.
Something happened.
This discussion will come up later also with the golden calf. Yes, Gail, and then Ruth Ann.
Just a quick question. Mary, is that, it says one who strikes his father and his mother. Does that imply that he has killed them or just hit them? I'm not quite sure.
Just hit them.
That's right, even without killing.
And 4 words. Umake aviv veimo mot yamut. Sorry, 5 words. the one striking father and mother is going to put to death.
Okay. Okay, Gail and Ruth Ann.
Okay, I was just wondering how much of this was to differentiate us from other societies, other groups. You know, there are many groups that you get ahead by, in this particular case, doing harm to your parents. That's how you get ahead. You inherit the family farm because you do away with dad. You know, and in this particular case, I mean, when you think about this, you're thinking about children or teenagers or whatever. But what if they're talking more like to our kids and how they need to treat us as senior citizens? You know, that's another thing.
Now, here's some,
Very good.
Michael, I'll call, I want to respond to Ruth Ann first because
Yeah.
there is a commentary here. And then I know Michael and Don have raised their hands. So, but I'm not sure of the order, but even with when the word strike, even without killing the parent. However, the Code of Hammurabi provided a penalty only when the father was offended. And the punishment was cutting off of the hand. Okay, so another culture also dealt with this. However, in the Code of Hammurabi, there is no mention of the mother. Okay, but here, the mother is the major difference here from the tribes around the Israelites is that the Israelites are going to be told it's not only your father, but also your mother that has to be respected. And you're not allowed to strike them in any manner. So I just wanted to point out that that's the big difference here. That the mother was being considered as well as the father, as opposed to the surrounding area where it was just the father. Okay, I know Michael and Don. I don't know who had the hand up first.
Go ahead, Michael.
Go ahead.
Hey, thank you, Don. Thank you, Don. Something recently I had to think about, and I think that Ruth Ann will help me with this. I was asked to do the Kol Nidre melody on a Kol Nidre night, the beginning of Yom Kippur, and I said, no, I can't do that. I can't play the piano on Yom Kippur. I couldn't do that. And then I started working on the prayer. I started playing it, and it was. Betty said it was the most beautiful thing she's ever heard me do on the piano. And I said, you're kidding. And that encouraged me, that I kind of lost it a little bit. And I said to Ruth Ann, I'll do it. I'll do it. But then I started to think about it. Oh, wait a second. Rabbi Neri, I said, I'll do it. But then I thought about it again. And I thought about dishonoring my mother and father. See, because they would not want me to do that. They would not want me to do that. That's not why they gave me many years of piano lessons and that type of thing. And so then I called Ruth Ann back and I said, after a second thought, I can't do it because what I would be doing is dishonoring my parents. That's the way I felt. So now I would like Mary to say that, respond after Don. Don, thank you very much, Don.
Yes, no problem.
Well, you know, first of all, there is a law, And the law says that you are not supposed on holidays and Shabbat to do any work that was done in the temple or building the tent of meeting. Playing the piano is not in that one. Now, there was a lot tradition, Michael, that you have to understand, that the tradition of many Jewish people in the diaspora, they carried all kind of things. And one of them was, I don't want to play the piano on Shabbat because the Goyim do that. The non-Jews go to church and play the piano. And I'm not going to do that. They sit together with families, and we are not going to do that. So there were restrictions that passed, like to you, my parents wouldn't like for me to do. That's how I feel. And I respect your feelings. And if you feel tell you not to do it, that's your conscience, and no one can tell you anything. The other thing is that being in prayer, it can be just by singing and praying and being in nature and hugging a tree. Those are prayers. Those are prayers. And if you read some of the Hasidic thought with Baal Shem Tov, you'll find it. But I 100% respect your feeling that your parents would not have liked for you to do it. I just explained to you how that came about and what's the law about it.
Okay, just 1 second, Don. Please, just one more second. Mary, I appreciate with all my heart everything that you said, and I respect it. And I would say this thing, there's no buts, but I would just say this. If I thought for 1 second in my thinking that I would bring disrespect and dishonor to my parents, I wouldn't do it no matter what any rabbi tells me. I don't care. It's what I believe personally. And so I do respect what you said, but on my thought, I will not change, no matter what you say or anyone else says, I won't do it after second thought. And God directed me. I want to tell you this. I think Helene would agree with me that God himself directed me to say that, to think that way.
Michael, you heard only half of my statement, because after I gave some information, I said, Michael, if you feel that you don't want to do it because you disrespect your parents, my respect to you, I think I even put my hands like that. I respect you 100%. Your feelings about what to do are your feelings. And if you feel that even God told you to not do it, absolutely, you are the commander of what you're going to behave.
I thank you for that, and I thank you before that. So I want you to know that I said everything you said. Everything you said, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Every single word. So I heard it all.
Thank you. Don, please.
Thank you, Don.
I wish God would speak to me once in a while. But coming back to the text, this is the point I raised last week. We had the same discussion, really, and that is that if a man strikes his parents, he'll be put to death. And we learned a couple of verses later, all he has to do is curse them, and he'll be put to death.
Mm-hmm.
But that implies the consent of the parent. And I'm going to ask again, what parents are going to allow their son to be put to death for striking them or even less for cursing them? I mean, I can't imagine that. And especially what discussion between a husband and wife might occur if the son should strike the father, and the authorities come to take away the son, and the mother is pleading, no, he's my son. You know, it seems.
But what changes, it has nothing to, my interpretation is that it has nothing to do with physical death. You see, if you start to look at it that way,
Rabbi
the
Mary?
son
Well,
would die because his parents would no longer respect him, and the community would no longer respect him,
What's the Hebrew?
and
What's the Hebrew?
and God would no longer respect him. So his relationship to the rest of his world dies. It's not a physical death. His soul dies.
What does the Hebrew say, Rabbi Mary? With regard to put to death?
I just,
you'll put to death. But Don, I want to let you know that I can include you personally among the rabbis that wrote the Talmud, or what Americans call the Talmud, And that's the discussion that you just bring up. I don't believe they would say, I don't believe that parents are going to allow their son to be killed. What came to my mind is if a son is into drugs and the parents take them to rehab and the child is doing that, eventually the parents might give up and society, I don't know if it will help it. But your question is an absolutely a Talmud question. So bravo.
it is. But I do say that we can talk in terms of physical, but emotional death. How does one react to parents that have abused them? Okay, the child's very being is destroyed.
Well,
That child has suffered a death, even though he's still living.
Well, I get the figurative stuff and the symbolic
Yeah.
stuff, but it
And-
seems to me this is very clear. You know,
Well, it comes up in the next, well, this is part of the debate. And I think we can take it black and white, but I think there's a lot more that enters into this with lots of shades of gray. And I think that's why the Talmudic, or I put the emphasis on the wrong syllable there when I say Talmud.
No, don't worry,
It's all right.
don't worry.
But
It's like Kabbalah and Kabbalah.
I think it's very important, because when we include this, and I want to do this at the end, if we shift to verses 16 and 17, okay, as Don was including this in his discussion, even when you kidnap someone, a man, whether he has been sold or is still holding him, you can see the cross references to the Joseph story. He shall be put to death. And he who insults his father or mother shall be put to death. That encompasses verse 17. So this discussion is not the specifics, but it's about death. Putting someone to death. You have lots of reasons here why that can happen. But you also can come up with a myriad of reasons not to do that. Okay, so we want to be sure, very sure, before we take that step, because once we do it, there's no turning back. Yes, Gail.
I was just going to say, I was thinking of a situation which actually comes up all too frequently in the world, and that is a child sees the father beating the mother,
Yeah.
and he tackles the father and hits him and whatever to defend his mother. Perfectly justified, I'm sure, but still he's hit his father.
Yes.
And I'm sure the rabbis settled that one very quickly and easily, but that's just one of those
But,
exceptions.
yeah, you bring up some very interesting, a very interesting way of looking at it. And as was brought up earlier, what Helene always addresses, when the child sees that and responds to it, he has a totally different relationship with his parents or her parents. Yes, Amy.
If you've ever had somebody that you loved dearly say something crushing to you, something
Oh,
that
yeah.
you've carried with you for years, part of you has been murdered, part of your heart broken, and it leaves a mark on you. So there's more than one way to kill a person.
Yes.
That is ways that are not physical.
That's what I think this
It
is
can't be
about.
seen. Yeah.
Yeah, that we're to think. These are examples, but there's much more to this. It's how, and Don alluded to this before when he wanted us to think and remember. It's how we relate to one another. I think, and Gail, yes.
I was just going to say, it's always been interesting to me, and in a good way, that Israel does not have the death penalty,
That's right.
with one exception, which we all know.
Yes.
But that's huge for a small country that's gone through what it has.
Hey,
Does
and
not
I
have the
believe,
death penalty.
Eichmann needed a special disposition from the rabbis in order for him to be killed. Seriously, the laws had to be modified.
No.
I said
The
it
law is
jokingly.
not to kill, except for the Nazis.
Right.
except for the what?
The Nazis.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I think, Mary or Rabbi Roman, if you know this, in relation to what Gail was saying, I think that how do I put this? That Israel actually has the death penalty, but it's not enforced. It's not enforced. Nobody has been put to death since I think it was Eichmann. It was Eichmann. So
Mhm.
it's a stigma. They use it as a stigma, but they don't put it in force or something to that effect. I'm not 100% sure about that, but that's what I've heard. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Now I'm going to ask another question. Just taking what we've been discussing, verses 12 through 16, what of the first 10 commandments are involved here? Well, it's obvious. Honor your parents. Okay. But what else?
12 through 16.
Yeah.
Uh,
What are the first in relationship to the first 10 commandments? How does this relate?
does it have anything to do with stealing?
That's one.
Yes.
Honor your parents. Stealing. Yes.
The kidnap is a form of stealing.
Yes.
Kidnapping.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And we had the discussion about stealing. It's not just material stealing. Think about that. When you steal someone's soul, all these different things pertain to that too. So we spoke about human behavior toward other people. Yes, Amy.
You can steal someone's reputation
You got
by
it.
a
Exactly.
word carelessly spoken or gossip.
There you go. All of these were part of our discussion of the 10 commandments. What else? That's right. So we've gone up to 5. Are there any other commandments that would be involved in this?
Lying,
Very important. Okay. False
Mur-
witness. Okay.
Mur-
And also taking God's name in vain. Okay. I can only imagine one commandment that is not mentioned here. And of the basic 10 commandments, that's not mentioned here. That has no bearing on this.
16?
The Sabbath,
Yeah.
okay? But everything else came into play. So based on our earlier discussions about the first 10 commandments, this is an expansion of these, except the Sabbath. It hasn't come up again. And if you can add anything else in, just make mention of it.
Marty,
Yes.
how does adultery
What happens when you
play into
commit
this?
adultery?
You're stealing from your spouse.
And
Never
it's
mind.
a form of death. It's a form of death.
Yes, yes, of course.
And you're
I didn't
also
say just
harming
for-
your own soul. Okay? The way you look at your world is going to be entirely different. And the spouse that's out of the initial equation, you say, you've harmed them. It's almost like a death experience. And so that's why I think when we use the term death, we all there had to be a reason for this. And I know we've had some of these discussions in our discussions of morality. Why is moral behavior important? It extends into ethical behavior, the interaction between people, it's not just an interaction between you and others. It is others amongst themselves and business and anything else you can come up with. Yes, Michael.
to respond to Amy, when she said adultery, it seems to me that will put many people to death in a way. Not just, it can extend to family and go beyond the three people that are actually involved.
Right.
So I think that's a really important, Amy. Thank you for that.
So even though it's a one-on-one circumstance, Michael just extended it to the entire community. So there's much more to this than what meets the eye. We can read it very literally, or we can have these discussions that take it into many philosophical areas. And we're not the first to discuss it this way. There are lots of other, this has been brought up in many other circles among the different rabbis I've spoken with before. Yes. Yes, Amy.
Breaking the commandments, or sin, if you want to call it that, is like a disease. It doesn't affect just the one person.
Right. It's true. And it also, the first time you do it, you may not think anyone is looking. Okay. And sometimes there has been somebody who saw it. So it's better to follow, if you will, the commandments or the rules, the law, however you want to look at it. Sorry about that. But I just think that now this goes further if somebody would kind to me read verse 18. Grace, if you have it available, if you would be kind enough to do that for us.
Yes. When men quarrel and one strikes the other with stone or fist, and he does not die, but has to take to his bed.
Okay, go ahead with 19.
If he then gets up and walks outdoors upon his staff, the assailant shall go unpunished, except that he must pay for his idleness and his cure.
Okay. So you don't escape punishment when you've stricken another person. You have to pay for the time the other person had to stay in bed and the medical expenses.
That sounds like American justice in small claims court.
No kidding. No kidding.
Yeah.
And any other comments about this?
Well, I think because it says men in quarrel, they're both
Yes.
engaged in the, ramifications of quarreling with one another.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I'm curious, it seems as though the one of them is using a stone, right? Or something
Mm-hmm.
to be more forceful with this quarreling.
Right.
So I think that's worth looking at.
Okay. Why?
I didn't say both of them had stones. It just says, it indicates that perhaps only one of them did.
Okay.
One unintentionally got the best of the other, and it's the heat of battle, and it wasn't premeditated. I think that's the clue there. It was not premeditated.
Meditated. Very good. Yes, Amy.
Well, the closed fist or the stone is a weapon.
Mm-hmm.
So it can cause death or severe harm. That's something that needs to be considered. It's more than shouting and yelling and
Right. It's carried to the higher level, if you will,
right.
by the disagreement.
Escalated.
I guess some people would say the lowest level of the disagreement. Yes, Todd.
Yeah, the text doesn't say that
That's
the
right.
strike was not premeditated. It could well have been premeditated.
Sure.
It only says that the victim didn't die.
I agree. By the way, isn't it nice that there are so many exceptions we can come up with? That we can actually we can say, hey, wait a minute, and that again is found in civil law.
Well, in this case, there is intention, because if you come
Yes.
with a weapon, your intention could be to cause harm. And you take in account, well, if I hit him in his head, he might die, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But the issue of intention to harm is absolutely there. And there is restoration, or what's the word?
Reparation.
Reparations. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that's a very powerful thing to have as a law.
Yeah. So as you can see this as a further extension of this. One of the things that is very important to recognize is that the gaps around the letters are important. The space around the letters is important. The space around the word is important. The space around the sentence, the space around the paragraph, the space around the page, the space around the books, and so forth. That is what gives us the ability to try to find further explanation. The space begs for adverbs and adjectives, whether we're dealing with verbs or nouns. We need qualification of each one of those. So there's much more to this, and it's encouraging us, not just the Israelites, but the rest of the entire world, to think about these things before we take action. Yes, Don.
Yeah, with all respect, Marty, I would quarrel with the idea of the actual formatting of the text having meaning beyond what God declared, because formatting the text and setting the characters up, and that's a human invention. It's kind of another layer of metaphysics that I don't know really is justified when we're talking about God's commandments. I don't think God had any idea when he was giving these commandments of what it would look like after Gutenberg. Yeah.
Well, even when you just speak a word, you create that same space. It doesn't have to be just written. Yes, go ahead, Ruth Ann. You're muted.
I keep unmuting myself and muting myself.
Okay.
I was just gonna say, other than the 10 commandments, okay, there is nothing in the Torah that was written by God. Orally was given, okay?
Right.
So when you talk about the spaces in between the words and whatever, that's all man, designed. I mean, whoever the first scribe was who started writing this stuff down whenever, which is interesting. So, I mean, at what point I've just thought of this. At what point did God say a written copy of the Torah should be by lawmakers, if it was all just oral, or was it just the 10 commandments? I mean,
excellent point.
that's the only thing that was ever written.
But even when you speak something, there is a space around everything that you say. It's not just a series of ughs. Okay. Each ugh has its own meaning, but it begs for more understanding. It's not just the written word, and that's what we're trying to say here. And many times there is as we will read, that we have to have our ears open in order to receive. That's why I wear hearing aids, to help. Okay. Because it was said, well, let's put it this way: you can say something and people don't hear it.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have people willing to open their ears so that what you say they will hear. That's what leads to a lot of arguments We don't always hear the same thing. We hone in on one word or one phrase rather than looking at the entire picture, the other empty spaces. And so, that's all I'm going to say. I don't want to go into details, but I want each one to at least think about the concept.
Do
Anyway,
you mean to read between the lines?
that's another way of saying it.
Mhm.
There's more to it than what first comes to mind. That's another way of saying it. So and that's why every time we read the Torah again and again every year, if we were doing it that way, we would walk away each year with a slightly different interpretation based on our experiences of the preceding year. What people have said, books we have read, TV we have watched, something that was mentioned in a newspaper, whatever. It changes our opinion a little bit. And maybe that's okay. We wouldn't have the Talmud if we didn't have that interpretation. And the other books of Gemat. Yes, Don.
Yeah, just to tag on to that comment, Marty, I have a book of meditations, daily meditations I've been reading since 1988. Every year, every day, every year, and every time it comes around 365 days later, it means something else. So I can I can join you with that stuff.
So it's hard. Yes, Gail. Gail had her hand, and then Grace.
I was just thinking about rereading Mark Twain at a young age, and middle age, and old age. You get a whole completely different feeling about Mark Twain and the meaning of his stuff.
Very good. Yes. And not many people know that he was also a sports commentator.
Wow, I didn't know that.
He wrote an entire series of short stories based on that. And you would think he's the original sports commentator. Okay, especially baseball. It's very interesting.
You're talking about the jumping frog?
There's so much more where he goes, pitch by pitch, hit by hit, run by run, error by error, all in detail as if it's excellent. Very well done. Grace, you said a lot. Oh, okay. Don and Grace have been having a conversation. Okay. It's true. But there's no firm answer to all of this. All we can do is raise the question. Yes, Grace.
I just wanted to say, I think it's about being flexible, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a kind of respectful and having some flexibility with our interpretations and understanding the difference between the commandment and the result of breaking someone's respect or being disrespectful.
Exactly.
So I think flexibility is an inherent part of all of it.
Very good. Excellent. Well, we still have a half hour, just shy of a half hour. Now there are more examples. Okay. When we let's read verses 20 and 21, because this is rather important too. Grace, did you want to read that?
I can.
Okay, please.
When a man strikes his slave, let's see, we're on verse 20, correct?
Verses 20 and 21.
Okay. When a man strikes his slave, male or female, with a rod and he dies there and then, he must be avenged. But if he survives a day or two, he is not to be avenged since he is the other's property.
Comments? I know, Gail, I can see the gears turning.
Mine too.
Any ideas? Why is slavery being addressed here this way? Go ahead, Don. You took the bait.
Well, you know, again, we run into the difference between property, people as property, and human beings. And so I find this very disturbing, but I mean, it was, I mean, it was what it was, and we know that. But the question I would have is, there's a difference between punish and put to death. And I wondered what the Hebrew words are compared to put to death within striking the parents and being punished for harming one, quote, property and slaves. For anybody who knows.
Well,
Rabbi Mary?
Slaves is another category of group of people. And it comes, regardless of what Rabbi Norman said last time, that we have to remember that we were slaves, okay? But when we talk about the rules and regulations, the slaves are a group that we have to do certain things a little different. And this is a good example of that, because the slaves are the property of the master. So they still become human beings, but not with the same status, the same caste than the rest of the people. Just like we have Kohanim, and they have special rules, and just like we have aliens that come, gerim, because you were a ger in Egypt. But they have different rules. There are different castes. I'm sorry if you don't like this, but that's how it worked. And here, if the master hits a slave, then two things happen. The first one is like if he hit anyone. So then the family is entitled to run after the master. That's a tricky one by the parents. It says, and if a man strike his slave or his maid with a rod and he dies by his hand, he shall be avenged. That's the rule. You can just go ahead and do something to the master. Just if he will stand for a day, just if you stayed for a day or 2 days, he shall not be avenged because he is his money, not even property.
His property,
his money.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think that the day or 2 days mean that he doesn't die automatically, but you know, it's like sick between 2 days. According to this, is not the same category of killing, which I never paid attention to that, and I'm reading this now. So there are two ways of behaving towards a slave by the master.
It would be interesting if would the master then have to flee to a sanctuary city? Give up everything
Well,
if he killed the slave?
Well, the one that can avenge is a family
Family,
person.
that's right. But then he would still have to give up everything to flee to the other city if
Right.
he says it was by accident. And so either way, he loses. If
Yeah.
So these are interesting twists on the legal aspect of this.
Yeah.
Yes, Don.
I'm trying to imagine an extreme example here, if you'll allow me here. I'm thinking of a survivor of Auschwitz who escapes to the West and has on their forearm a tattooed serial number. So at one time they were property, they were slaves. They
Mhm.
were legal property in Germany. And so none of these laws apply, just not apply in any way. Now they've escaped, they're citizens of a free country. How would they read these verses?
Interesting. I'm at a loss. It would be hard for us. It would need to be somebody who is either children of somebody who went through the Holocaust or a survivor themselves.
But Don, I am not a daughter of a survivor. I'm one of the Jewish people. And I have not been to Germany. I travel a lot. But I'm not going to Germany and I'm not going to Austria.
Okay.
So that's kind of,
Yeah.
they don't care if I come
Okay,
or
okay.
not.
Okay, Dawn, I'm sorry, I had to go get my tea and I missed your question. I am the daughter of a Holocaust survivor.
Very good.
So if you want to repeat your question, I can tell you what I can.
Okay, thank you, Ruth. And I was looking for an extreme example. And the case is of a survivor of Auschwitz, tattoo on the forearm, who escaped and now is living in a free country in the West. So they were, at one time, they were property within the country. They were legal property. They were not a human being. And we know what that was about. So how would they look at these verses in that we're reading right now? What, and it's an
the
open
only-
question because I can't imagine that.
Okay, I mean, the only thing I can tell you is my father would never have anything in our house or anything that was German made. As far as he knew, he would do nothing to help the German economy. And, when I can remember when I was, just got my driver's license, and what was the least expensive car that you could save up for, with your babysitting money would have been a Volkswagen. And he went ballistic. There was absolutely no way. And we went, I mean, even here as an adult, my father's passed, we went and looked at some German cars. And, because we just happened to be on a dealership where they had multiple different brands. And I told Sid, no, we could not even look at a German car because I got that from my father. He would do nothing, and he would never go back to Germany or any of those places. But pretty much, I mean, he shut down. I didn't know a whole lot about his experience.
But the verse we're reading says that the slave survives being struck. They won't be punished. That the master won't be punished if the slave survives. So, we're reading that in the Torah, but I can't imagine how a survivor of a concentration camp could read that and wonder how do I understand this? you know,
Well,
is there-
Don, this is an example. This is an example, and you moved into the Holocaust because there is a slave and going out and what is supposed to remember. So the actions like Ruth Ann said, that's like a avenge. Avenge would be, if you read books, there are several books about the Mossad in Israel that went after Nazis. And it was a kind of revenge. And they shot them and they killed them. Really, a lot of books about that. And it happened because enough is enough. But it's difficult to bring from the Torah that were slaves and etc. and bring to us. Maybe we can go to the slavery in the United States, if a master hit a slave, what happens? Can the slave be revenged? Forget it.
So, yes, Amy, very good discussions here. Yes, Amy.
What I don't understand is the 2-day leeway between if the slave doesn't die instantly, but he dies 2 days later. To me,
Yes.
that time frame doesn't mean anything because he died probably as a direct result of the assault. So the intent was there.
You can go also to movies and series, and you'll see one of the questions to the expert is, do you think that he died because he was hit or because he already suffered, help me out, Marty, of a tumor that exploded?
A subdural hematoma, a blood clot.
Right. And there is a question on that.
Sure. These are the fine lines in the law. Amy and Don and Rabbi Mary, Ruth Ann, you're all hitting on different aspects of this. What happens to the owner? See, there's one with immediate death and there's one with a slower death. By giving the victim back to the owner, it implies here, although not stated, that the owner now has to bear the responsibility of taking care of that slave. He's lost the work of the slave for 2 days. Okay, and at the same time, that means his responsibility level has been increased through the law based on the commandment, but the owner then has to then deal with the responsibility. Does he feel just a monetary guilt, or will he have an emotional guilt thereafter? Yes, Amy.
From my perspective, the slave would have been better off dying instantly, but by living 2 days or a week,
There's suffering.
He
Yes.
suffered mightily, and I don't really care about the slave owner. I care
understand.
about the suffering of the
But-
man prior to also losing his life.
Yeah.
It's like a double insult.
But I agree, but I'm just saying that if the slave owner feels guilt, he's going to be less apt to do this again. Most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time. So that's why it's a play between the victim and the perpetrator. Because if you think about it, if the penalty is going to be the same as if it's two strangers arguing and it gets to the level of death. Well, here's another situation where it could the same thing, but it's what you carry with you for the rest of your life that's going to come into play. And you would hope that that will be the case, that you'll feel remorse for what you had done. Yeah, so you don't do it again. Okay. Yes, Suzanne. You've been very quiet listening to everyone.
I haven't, I'm just kind of sleepy here. This verse 21 really bothers me. And
Mhm.
as I read it, it's like giving the master a license to be abusive. Slaves and I just I don't understand how that glorifies God. I don't get it.
That's an interesting take on it. So you can withhold food, you can do all kinds of things.
Yeah, as long as the slave doesn't die,
Sure.
you're not accountable. I just don't understand why there would be such a law. It makes no sense to me whatsoever.
Okay. Yes, Don.
Well, because these people were property. They weren't people.
Right.
And that's the disturbing thing about it. I mean, the Hebrews escaped slavery, and now they have slaves. I don't get it, but that's the way it was.
I mean, it almost seems like animals could be treated better.
Very interesting.
Yeah,
Yes, Amy.
I just don't
Yeah,
like it.
And then
it almost looks like they're condoning slavery, giving permission to abuse your slaves as long as they survive 2 days, then you're off the hook. It is confusing. It's bewildering.
But maybe it's because I'm not trying to take sides, but maybe it's because the slave owner then suffers the loss of financial loss because he lost property in the action. I don't know. I'm not just saying.
The owner suffers.
I know Gail had her hand up first.
Go ahead, Gail, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, the situation of women up until fairly recent times has been that actually of slaves.
Yes.
We kind of gloss over that, but gosh, guys.
No, it's very true. But it's only until the modern era that women are not looked at as property.
Well, and Marty, I'd like to interject something here before we continue or before we end. The next particular verse, I think we definitely should not do anything about it today.
I agree. I don't intend to. I want to stop.
A really deep thing.
That's right. So Ruth Ann, you're going to have the final word.
The only thing I was going to say is, if you look at historical, and we can't, okay, maybe this was still a step up in ethical behavior. And, God didn't take, the Hebrew people, Amy, I'm muting you a second. Okay. God didn't take the Hebrew people up more than they could do. So maybe, we're looking at this in the 21st century, but maybe in the way back then, this was really, something different as far as ethics goes.
That's right. Slavery. This was one of the first attempts, if you will, in law at that time. Slavery was a way of life. It had been in existence and it continues for thousands of years after all this. But this is an attempt to start a change, and it has to be in a little way. You can't say absolutely not. The society would fall apart at that point in time because of the way it was structured. Excellent point. Rabbi Mary
Now,
and
let
Amy.
me say, one of the things that we're
Hmm.
going to encounter soon in this series is that there is I'm looking for the word, a Israeli or Jewish or Hebrew slave, and there is the other slave that doesn't belong to the people. So we have two types of slaves, and the rules are going to be different. Now here, beferush, it says, because he is money, not even property, because the slave is money.
That's right. It recognizes the fact of the day. Unfortunately, well, let's put it this way. We should all be fortunate that we live in a world like we live in today. That's all I can say.
Yes.
Amy, you had your hand up too, and then we're running up against the clock. So Amy, go ahead.
I'll be real brief. I wanted to respond to what Gail said. There are large communities in the world today where women are still enslaved. Places in India, among the Muslim world, we need to hold them in prayer.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's
Good
all I
point.
wanted to say.
Yeah, no, you are so correct. You're so correct. That's going to dovetail into some of next week's discussion. So you may want to write that down so you say it again next week too. Okay. Yes, Michael.
Okay, thank you, Marty. Thank you very much.
Okay.
At the very beginning of the Torah study, I mentioned where did anti-Semitism, why is it? And then you made a discussion about that would take a long discussion. I would just say this, and it's not for now. I would just say this in response to what you said, that if we take a look honestly, where did anti-Semitism begin? You'll find I think you'll find the answer there, and all the other things are nothing but excuses to keep it fueled. So that's what I want to talk about, and so that's what I want to say. So I don't think it would take that long of a discussion, but that's for another time, Marty.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you. Ruth Ann, do you have any announcements?
Yeah, I was just thinking about what do I do. Monday morning is a board meeting. And I'm not going to get into specifics now, but I will bring up that something is going to be brought up to a vote from the board to go ahead with something which is a large dollar item. Okay, it's going to cost bucks. So I invite everybody who was on the in the congregation to please come and attend the meeting so you can start to hear what's going on. So then you can ask questions. So when it does come up with a congregation vote, and I'll be honest, in the 5 years that I've been here, the precedent for some of these congregation votes is very lax. I mean, we've had congregation votes at bagel breakfasts where people are not informed of what's going on. So I invite everybody, come on Monday, hear the motion. I mean, the board itself may vote it down on Monday, in which case, thank you for attending, but it will show the importance of it. I think this is very, very important. And I'm not trying to tell you whether I'm for or against it, but you could probably tell from what I said. Second of all, on Thursday, Rabbi is going to continue with his Amy. Sorry, Amy. can't take the background. We're going to continue with the series Death and Dying, and especially in southern Arizona where it's a horse of a different color. That's going to be 2 o'clock, and that's going to be on Zoom. If you cannot attend in person, please get your questions, if you have any questions, to Rabbi Roman. And that's the 2 most important things that are going on this week.
What time's the
Thank you.
board meeting Monday?
The board meeting is at 10 o'clock, but unfortunately it is not going to be on Zoom.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
not going to be recorded, but after the fact, Grace, I mean, when we see if it's voted by the board, yes or no, I will fill you in on what it is.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Amy.
Just a request, Ruth Ann, whenever you put out a notice that there's a board meeting, would you be sure to include the information that all temple members are invited?
I don't do that anymore. That's not my responsibility.
For who does it, Stacy?
Well, they would become from Gloria. Gloria puts together
Gloria.
the e-blast. Stacy only forwards them. Stacy doesn't
Okay.
write them. Stacy only forwards them. Jane only forwards them. And you could probably tell my e-blast from other e-blasts because after the past 3 years or so, they pretty much, I think, have a theme.
Thank you. I'll get in touch with Gloria.
Okay. Okay. See everybody.
Bye.